like a bird on a tree. I'm just sitting here, I got time, it's clear to see. From up here, the world seems small. We can sit together, it's so beautiful, you and me. We meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free. Sometimes you need to go and take a step back to see the truth around you.
Good morning and welcome to the second of my walking videos. And this morning I'm in the quite lovely borders town of Peebles on a circular walk next to the Tweed. It's a place called Lyne Station and back. The walk itself is going to take in 2 old towers, 1 castle and 1 tower called Barnes Tower. And the first castle that we're going to pass is Needpath Castle, which will be shortly. The first part of the walk's alongside the river, then it's on old railway path up to Lyne Station itself, then we cross the river by way of an old chain bridge, and come back on the other side of the Tweed. And this is actually a stunning walk. The weather forecast for today is a bit patchy. It's supposed to start snowing soon, although it seems to have cleared up a little, which is a bonus. But this is just us heading off from the main car park in Peebles. And we'll catch up with you later. The walk starts at the Meadow car park, a large free car park sat next to the River Tweed. The town is a royal borough given its charter way back in 1152 and sits in the middle of an area of outstanding natural beauty. It's a great place for walking, and 2 trails pass through the town. The shorter John Buchan Way, a 14-mile route which starts at the Meadow car park and climbs over the hills to Stobo and then on to Broughton, and the historic Cross Borders Drove Road, which is a fantastic route running from the outskirts of Edinburgh right down to Howick. The coat of arms of the Royal Borough of Peebles features 3 salmon on a red field. The motto is Contra Nando Incrementum, Latin for there is growth by swimming against the stream, referring to the annual migration of salmon up the River Tweed. Now we're coming round a bend in the river here, and in a moment you'll just be able to see Needpath Castle, and it's a structure that dates right back to the 15th or 16th century, and it's remarkable that it's survived so long, although at one point it was completely destroyed by fire.
It's been rebuilt a couple of times over the years. It did fall into disrepair at one stage, and a couple of the towers on it collapsed, and you can actually see still today where the towers have collapsed. But the castle itself is typical of the Borders area, which was quite a lawless and violent place for right up until maybe the beginning of the 17th century, or even up to the mid 17th century, with the border reivers. And although there was an official Scotland and England border, really the north of England and the south of Scotland were pretty much laws unto themselves. And there is the castle itself is still in use. You can actually stay there and book a room. It's used for events and filming, and you can hold your wedding there if you like. And these sort of squat square towers exist all over the south of Scotland, and this is probably one of the better preserved, certainly of the bigger ones. Let me just take that off the strap, and we'll it's a bit difficult to tell from here at the moment, just with the... We're not quite got the best view of it. But you'll see another tower a bit further on once we cross the Tweed at Lyne Station, which is a lot smaller, which is in good repair as well. And you can see just to the left of the tower is where the tower's collapsed, and they've not bothered to rebuild it, but actually roofed over the lower section. Obviously the walls there are stable enough, but you can actually book by appointment a visit to the castle itself. And this is just a bend in the Tweed. It really is quite a lovely spot here. We're only maybe about 10-15 minutes walk from the town itself. The tower itself is actually strategically positioned quite close to the main Glasgow road, so it was likely that it was built there, well, not just for convenience, but a good place to keep an eye on things, really. You might not quite be able to see it yet, but just ahead of us is the bridge that took the railway across the Tweed. Just off to the left is the tunnel I was speaking about. But the bridge here it's not just a practical structure, it's actually quite a beautiful structure in the way it's been built, and quite ornate. Now the railway line here was built around 1856 and connects Symington on the West Coast Main Line to Peebles, although the extension through to Peebles wasn't completed until I think the mid 1860s. And the line actually runs through some quite beautiful countryside. Once it gets to Lyne Station, it runs down past Stobo, through to Broughton, onto Biggar, and then gets to the main line at Symington, where there was a station. There's been no station there for quite some time now. The line itself was shut to passengers in 1950, so it actually predates the beaching cuts. And it wasn't long after it was close to freight traffic as well. We'll be climbing up onto the railway path in a moment, and then just following it all the way through to Lyne Station. But as we get closer, you can see what a nice structure this actually is. And not far from the end of the bridge there is the tunnel portal. But it's just a fantastic structure. Trains would have taken about 2 hours to get to Glasgow from here, and actually that's not far off what it takes by road now. It's, you know, you maybe save about 20 minutes. But I think the likelihood of this ever being reinstated is quite slim. Weather's beginning to close in a little bit now. The snow that was forecast, it's more sleet at the moment, and it's trying desperately to snow down on us. We're about halfway to Lyne Station at the moment, and actually the ground underfoot's quite solid at the moment, just with the overnight frost that must have been down below -5 overnight. Thank you. And generally not a fan of railway paths, but this one actually keeps quite a nice little line and a little bit of height above the river. So you just having that little bit of height and the lack of vegetation to either side actually makes this quite pleasant. You get good open views over the surrounding countryside. It's well supplied with benches as well, which is good, although I don't think today is a day for lingering, as the wind's up a little bit and it's a tad cold. The railway itself pretty much follows the Tweed all the way down to Doig, past Stobo, where the river and the railway diverges, and the railway heads off towards Broughton. But it follows the path of least resistance really, and it's quite hilly country around here. So this is the end of the railway path for us, and we're just crossing this viaduct, and Lyne Station itself is just ahead of us, and we're going to drop down off the bridge to walk through the village. But the existence of the village is really pretty much just down to the railway. And this is the point that we cross the Tweed and start heading back again.
Although Lyne Station is just a collection of a few houses, the parish is well spread out. There is a lovely old church on the opposite side of the main Peebles road, which has been there since medieval times, though the current kirk does date from the 17th century. Here we're crossing the River Tweed, or Tweed Water, and it's a river 97 miles long that flows east across the Scottish borders and into northern England. Tweed is an old Celtic name meaning border, and tweed cloth derives its name from its association with the river on account of the hundreds of mills powered by the river at one time. The Tweed is one of the great salmon rivers of Europe and generates a large income for the local borders region, attracting anglers from all around the world, and it's one of the best salmon rivers in Scotland.
This is us just entering the Barnes estate, and the Barnes Tower is just up ahead. But this little avenue is up, actually quite stunning in the spring. There's a beautiful display of daffodils down here, it's quite spectacular. This is us approaching Barnes Tower, and this is a tower that dates back from about the 16th century. And these towers were all over the place in the south of Scotland, and what they were for really is if the local population got wind of a raid coming through by reavers, they'd all get inside these towers and barricade themselves in, basically. And the idea was that these places just weren't worth the time and effort for the reavers to attack and potentially get killed over, so they'd just bypass them. It wasn't much consolation for the local populace, though, who would probably end up losing the livestock. And it was really the poor folk with maybe just one or two cattle that suffered the brunt of these things, that they'd have their livestock stolen, and it would be back and forth, Scots heading south and raiding the English, and the English coming back and raiding the Scots. But these towers gave them an element of safety.
The reavers were both English and Scottish and raided both sides of the border impartially, so long as the people they raided had no powerful protectors and no connection to their own kin. Their activities, although usually within a day's ride of the border, extended both north and south of their main haunts. English raiders were reported to have hit the outskirts of Edinburgh, and Scottish raids were reported to have reached as far south as Lancashire and Yorkshire. The main raiding season ran through the early winter months, when the nights were longest and the cattle and horses fat from having spent the summer grazing. The numbers involved in a raid might range from a few dozen to organised campaigns involving up to 3,000 riders. Come off the sycamore there. The water's quite high here at the moment, but during the summer the banks here are riddled with sand martin nests, and it's wonderful just to stop and watch them for a while doing their acrobatics. Amongst other wildlife as well, as some goosanders and kingfishers down here, plenty of herons. There's always some kind of wildlife on the river, as well as the quite stunning scenery down here as well. The upper parts of the Tweed catchment form the area known as Tweeddale, part of which is protected as the Upper Tweeddale National Scenic Area, one of 40 such areas of exceptional scenery protected from inappropriate development in Scotland. Major towns through which the Tweed flows include Innerleithen, Peebles, Galashiels, Melrose, Kelso, Coldstream and Berwick upon Tweed, where it flows into the North Sea. The bridge here is Manor Bridge, built in 1883 to replace a ford. Before it was built, the road into Peebles once crossed Old Manor Bridge, just 100 metres or so to the south, which was built in 1702. The route climbed the Sware, which takes us up to a quite stunning viewpoint, and the name of the bridge actually comes from the stream it crosses, the Manor Water.
We're just approaching back Peebles now after a little climb up the hill. There's a tad windy on top, but this point gives a fantastic view over the town, and just in the distance there you can see Peebles Hydro. That you maybe can't quite see it, but it's the white building in the background, and the town really grew up as one of these spa towns where you came to take the water.
The route descends off the hillside, passing through a new housing development, then a small industrial estate before returning to the park and the River Tweed. From there it's just a short walk back along the river to the Kings Meadow car park and the end of the walk. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please leave a like or a comment in the section below, and hopefully I'll see you again on another walk soon. Thanks and bye for now.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see. From up here, the world seems small.